Our next topic is movable chord forms against open string pedal tones. That's saying a mouthful. And this is the kind of thing you hear all the time in Pete Townsend and the Allman Brothers, like Melissa, Led Zeppelin, Ramble On, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, from the beginning, where you have chord voicings that move around, but you have a pedal tone that stays the same through all the movement of the chords. Now on the guitar, the easiest way to do that is to use one of the open strings as a pedal tone. So generally speaking, you would use the lower strings, the D string, the A string, or the E string as your pedal tone, and you move the chord voicings on strings above that. And when you're in altered tunings or open tunings, you can do the same thing. All right, this next example, this is going to be along the lines of what Pete Townsend does on the song Substitute, where I'm playing triadic chord forms on the top 3 strings against that open D pedal. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... I started with the D triad here with the D bass and switched to an A triad, still with the D bass, down to G against the D, and then back to D. But I did a little on the high string moving down. To make it sound a little more interesting. Then another D triad, but a high one. Switch to a high A triad. So we did the same thing, just in 2 different registers. D, A, G, D, D, A, G, D. And this is a very Genesis-like guitar part. Now let's move over and use the open A string as a pedal tone. And we're going to slide 2-note chord voicings up the D and the B string as we play through this progression using that open A pedal tone. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, I'm playing an A minor 7th here, and I'm just sliding this up. So I'm also additionally using this open E string as a pedal tone, and the G string as its own pedal. It's just not the root pedal, which is A. And you hear Jimmy Page and Pete Townsend use patterns like this all the time. Now if we switch that first chord to an A major chord and pick up the tempo and increase the strumming that we're doing, you get a figure that sounds a little like the Kinks' jukebox music, and it's also like Question by the Moody Blues. 1, 2, 3, and... Right, so the technique I'm using here is actually to move our little chord voicings in 6ths up the neck. Now 6ths are 2 notes, and the interval is that they're a 1/6 apart. That means 6 scale degrees, and we're in the key of A. So the scale I'm using as my reference point is A mixolydian, which I'll show you in a second. But if we move up, if we start with these 2 notes, we're in the key of A, as I say. The note on each string is going to go up the A mixolydian scale. So on the D string, we're going from E to F sharp to G to A to B to C sharp, D, and E. And that's harmonized a 1/6 higher by going from the major third C sharp to D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, and C sharp. So here's A mixolydian played in 4th position. So it's just like a major scale, except you have a flat 7, a dominant 7. All right, so in this next example, I'm going to use those 6ths and move all the way up the neck, as I just showed you, and then the following example, all the way back down in a rhythm guitar part. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, and... 1, 2, 3, and... All right, now, instead of using 6ths, let's just use 3rds. We'll go back to using our D as our pedal tone. And again, this is going to be based on mixolydian, so we're in the key of D. So we have D mixolydian played in 4th position is like this. Switch to 5th. And you'll hear patterns like this all over the playing of Steve Stills with Crosby, Stills and Nash. And also you hear it, Noel Redding do it on the song with Jimi Hendrix, Little Miss Strange. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Let's try the same technique moving back to using an open A pedal, but we're going to do full triads on the D, G, and B strings. And you hear this stuff, it's along the lines of Eric Clapton's Let It Rain, or you hear it in Rod Stewart stuff with Ronnie Wood, like the first few Rod Stewart and the Faces records that have a lot of great acoustic guitar on it. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and... Let's take the same concept, move over, and use the low E as our pedal tone. And I'm going to be playing triadic shapes on the A, D, and G string. And this is along the lines of what you hear on Melissa by the Allman Brothers. 1, 2, 3, and... Now, one of the nice things about this form is that we get to use the top 2 strings as well as sympathetic ringing notes or higher pedal tones, along with each one of the chord voicings, and it sounds great. Big part of alternative rock is that sound of the open strings ringing and the music of U2 and the Smiths, bands like that. All right, let's stick with the triad concept for a second. We'll move back to using the open D pedal tone. And I'm going to switch from a suspended triad shape to a major triad shape, and then descend the board in somewhat of a symmetrical fashion. And this kind of sound you hear Jimmy Page use all the time. It sounds a little bit like Kashmir. So I started with D sus to D, and then C sus to C, A sus to A, and this also actually sounds like D sus 2. but it also functions as A sus4 to A over D bass, G sus4 to G over D, F sus4 over D, which also sounds like B flat sus2. To F over D, which is also D minor 7. I just ended with an F sus2 and a little lick. Jimi Hendrix liked to use these kind of techniques too. You hear them on Third Stone from the Sun, and you also hear it on songs like Angel and One Rainy Wish. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use suspended shapes, or like 6/9 shapes. There's a couple different ways to analyze them, and slide them around against the low E pedal. Here's the riff. 1, 2, 3, and... All right, I'm borrowing my index finger across the 5th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd string, and then on the 2nd string, I'm fretting 1 fret higher with the ring finger. So this is like an E6/9 chord. And when I pull it back, you could think of it as D6/9 over E, or it's also like an E sus2 sus4, and I went here. And this is another 6/9 chord, but like a major 7. You could call it major 9/13. There's a lot of names for that. And then this here is like a E6, E6/9, again, just like that. And then I went over here. There's a couple ways to look at that. That's like E7 sus4. But then on the way up, I played. So this here, it's like E minor 7 sus4, back to our D6/9, or however we want to call that, back to the top. Another great way to use pedal tones for acoustic guitar parts is to take major triad shapes and just move them up and down the neck, basically symmetrically, meaning that I'm not keeping my chord forms staying within a specific scale. And you're going to hear Jimmy Page do stuff like this on Song Remains the Same, Pete Townsend on Amazing Journey. Those are two really good examples. But you hear it in all different kinds of acoustic rock music. And when you hear it, you'll see what I mean. 1, 2, 3, and... So all I'm doing is taking my D chord form, first position, and I slide it up a whole step so it's E over a D pedal tone. Slide it up another half step. So you could call it an F triad against the D, but it also can be analyzed as D minor 7. That's G over D, A over D, B flat, C, and then back to D. So let's take that concept and move it down one string, and instead of using an open D pedal tone, we'll use an open A pedal tone, real common. And I'm going to use an A, start with an A triadic shape, and move up in very much the same way. You hear this in Tom Petty, everybody from Tom Petty to Jeff Beck to Ted Nugent. You know, it's just a very common guitar technique that sounds great. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, and... Now let's take that same idea and move it one more string lower to use our open low E as a pedal tone. And keep in mind what I had done was when I used the D as a pedal tone, I started with a D chord shape. A pedal tone, started with an A, so now E. I'm going to start with an E shape. Same deal, move up the neck. And listen to how cool it sounds using this, just the same shape and the different sounds that you can get on the guitar The other thing is as I move over to the lower strings, that gives me the opportunity to use the open top two strings to ring as well as higher pedal tones. 1, 2, 3, and... Another great way to use pedal tones is to combine them with chordal arpeggiations. This next example, I'm going to use sixths. I'm going to use two-note pairs that are sixths apart, which means when you look at a scale, if you have a note, you count 6 scale degrees higher, and that's where the next note is. You hear a rhythm part like this in Wanted Dead or Alive by Bon Jovi, but it's real common. Pete Townsend, again, I'm arpeggiating, which means I'm picking all the notes individually, but I allow it to ring throughout to get a full sound. Here it is. All right, I'm repeatedly picking that D pedal, and then on the G and the high E string, I'm playing these little two-note figures that outline D minor. The fifth and the minor third, the fourth and the second, minor third, and the root. So the pairs of notes are coming from the D Dorian mode, and then that just continues down the strings, straight down the scale, but played in harmony every time. All right, this next example is going to be played in the style of James Taylor, and what I'm doing here is I'm changing the pedal tone to accommodate the different chord as the chord goes by. So let me play the example, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. I start with the open D string, and immediately in like one move, I do a hammer from the index to the pinky. So while holding this shape, which is like a D sus2 shape, 7th, 5th, 5th, pick, and then with the fingers, the G and B string, and hammer right away. And then finger pick the high E string. And this is a hammer pull. And then I just move the concept over to the open A string with hammering from 4th fret on the G to 6th fret while holding 5th fret of the B. Same kind of deal. A hammer pull 4/6 on the G. Then I went to... So this is like a G major 7th chord. And then I arpeggiate. Now this method in the fingering to play an A major chord is something that is like a James Taylor patent. It's really like the way you would play a D chord, going from index, ring to middle. Normally people would play index, middle, ring, or just bar for an A chord. But he does the A just like you would do a D, because it enables you to do the same kind of little embellishments. So I'm bringing that middle finger down while the other strings are ringing. Pinky, pull up. That's G, D with an F sharp bass, back